Welcome to Genius Talk. I'm your host Atul Raj, and today's guest is George Haymaker, a former entrepreneur who hit rock bottom at the age of 50, facing addiction, anxiety, and trauma, and came out the other side not just sober but with a new mission. He now helps business owners revive their brain for powerful, lasting changes through neuroscience-based coaching. George, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. Nice to meet you, and hello, everyone.
Okay, how can someone make changes in their personality by dividing their brain and body?
Well, yeah, so personality is how others view us, just first of all, and identity is how we view ourselves. And so, what I try to work with people on is how they view themselves, and then being the people that they want to be, the ideal version of themselves without conflict or internal mental friction. And then typically their personalities or how people see them changes as well. The upshot of it is that all mental life occurs in the brain, or it emerges from the brain. And the brain is very forgiving. It's a very plastic, adaptable, changeable, evolvable organ. So just because it's giving us the mental life that we have today doesn't mean that it can't change and give us a different one tomorrow. There's 85 billion neurons in the brain. Those are the brain cells, and they have mapped themselves and created patterns in the brain in response to all of our past experiences in our lives. So all of us have different mappings in our brain. All the neurons look different. They're patterned differently because we've all had different experiences. And so just as those patterns have shaped and mapped themselves according to our past experiences, they're more than willing to move around and repattern themselves if we change how we're showing up in the world. So if we choose to think, feel, and act differently according to a different version of ourselves, a new, more preferred version in terms of acting like the person that we want to be instead of the one we have been, the neurons will move around and create a new organization. And by virtue of that new organization, the brain will then predict new mental experiences going forward. And so I can explain that more in depth, but that's really the high level picture that the brain is more than willing to change its patterning, but we have to show it the way. The brain doesn't lead us, we lead the brain. The brain is trainable, but it doesn't do it for us.
Okay, so I guess first we have to decide what kind of personality we want to have.
Identity, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
An identity is made up of, if we sat there and thought deeply about what our values are, how we'd like to believe about ourselves, not how we do believe necessarily, but how we'd like to. Like, let's say that we're not confident and we have a lot of self-doubt, but we'd like to be confident and we'd like to be more decisive and certain about who we are and our self-worth. Okay, that's completely different, right? So our identity might reflect one of a person that's unconfident, but we can decide as we design this person that we want to be confident. So it's made up of our beliefs, our values, our strengths, our traits, how we think we'd like to think, feel, and behave in this new role, in this new identity. And then we have to then start to act out that person. So it's very much like if you're an actor and you get a script from a director and it says, here's your character. You have to go and learn about this character, how they think, feel, behave, everything about them, how they talk, and how they body position themselves, everything. And then you have to go rehearse being that person until you become that person. That's very similar to what we're doing here. And we may very well have a lot of things about ourselves that we like. And so those are things that we take with us as we construct this new person, but then we may change some things that we're not happy with. And so then it's those things that we're changing that we have to repattern and rehearse very religiously so that they start to become part of who we are.
So does affirmation help? Because I heard a lot that people use affirmation to change their personality.
I'm sorry, does what help?
Like affirmation, saying same thing again and again.
Yeah, so the brain learns based on repetition. So it's very much like if you go to the gym and you want to get bigger muscles, you know that you're not going to be able to get bigger muscles the first day. You have to go again and again and again and do the muscles, exercise the muscles over and over and over again. The brain is very much like a muscle in the sense that it won't change, won't become different unless you exercise it a lot. The other part of it is that the brain is resistant to change at the beginning because the brain's number one job is to keep us safe in survival and conserve resources. The brain doesn't care if we have a bigger house or we're happy or, it doesn't care about any of that. Its job is to keep us safe, alive, so that we can have babies and continue with the species. It's all about evolution, okay? And it wants to conserve as many resources as it can in the process because it's working 24/7 and it has a lot of work to do and it doesn't want to spend resources unnecessarily. So it's not interested in changing unless you show it how to change. And that change has to be safe so that it understands that because the brain always is guarding against threat. It's scanning the environment looking for threats against us. And so it has to be shown that the change that we're trying to lead it towards is safe, that we're going to survive it, and that it's rewarding. So we all know that we like to feel reward when we do things. That's how we develop motivation to do things. And that reward is given to us in the brain in the form of neurochemicals like dopamine, like serotonin, endorphins, oxytocin. And those chemicals surge through our brain and our bodies and make us feel good. So the brain wants to know that what we're going to change to is safe and that it feels good. And so that's what we need to do is repeat these changes over and over again and make them feel good. Focus on the parts of it that really make us feel good so that the brain is willing to continue and less resistant to make these changes.
So, I have seen a lot of people when they wake up, they're fully motivated and they already know what they want to do. And the starting of the day was good, but after noon, they lost all their motivation, their discipline. So, how can someone deal with that?
Yeah, so the brain is a resource tank. It's made up of a lot of different resources. It's very much like a gas tank. And what we want to do is create a lifestyle and training for different parts of the brain, different domains, they're called, different sections like attention, motivation, focus, cognitive resources, emotional regulation. These are all like little tanks around the brain, and we have to train them for higher levels of performance. And then we have to make sure that we have lifestyles that also produce maximum amounts of fuel for the brain to operate on. So those are things like sleep, proper diet, nutrition, exercise. These are all things that fill up that gas tank full of gasoline or resources. And
Sorry
then
to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. But how much is sleep important?
it's critical.
How much critical?
Very critical. The brain is doing lots of functions while we're sleeping, even though we don't realize it. So it is resetting all the neurotransmitters in the brain, which the brain runs on. Those are chemical messengers. It is reloading itself with glucose from the body. Glucose and oxygen make ATP, which is the energy that the brain uses. The brain also consolidates memories from the day and moves them into long-term storage. So in other words, anything that you learn new that's new and different from the day, it takes those memories out of short-term memory and moves them into long-term memory. The brain also um, removes toxins from the brain from the day that have accumulated, excess protein. It also prunes synapse that are no longer being used. So nerve cells that are not being utilized, it'll prune the synapses and remove the waste from the brain. So there's a ton of things that are going on at night during the different sleep cycles that are really critical for you to wake up in the morning feeling rested and renewed. And so if you're not getting a full night's sleep and you're not going through like 4 to 5 sleep cycles a night with all the different sets of brain waves, all those functions are not occurring. And that's why you would wake up feeling tired or not rejuvenated. And then therefore your resource tank is not refilled.
Okay.
And then the other, if I might, then the other critical part is once you start the day with the amount of mental resource that you have based on your lifestyle and how well you're training your brain. And training the brain's critically important. I want to emphasize that because we all think that we can just wake up in the morning and make the brain work all day and not train it and expect it to perform. And that's not the case. We don't we don't we don't expect that we're going to be able to not train our bodies and just have it operate without fail for our lifetime. We know that we have to get exercise, we have to eat right for our bodies to perform. The same exact thing applies to the brain. but people don't realize that and they don't train their brains for all these different domains that are critical. Motivation is one of those. And so we can actually train our brain to be motivated by things, different things than perhaps that we are. So the brain is tempted to get motivated by the shortest, easiest fixes that it can. So that's why when we multitask or procrastinate or scroll on our phone, the brain is getting little bits of dopamine reward, but it's very tiring for the brain. In other words, it spends the gas or the mental resources that I just described twice as fast as it would if it didn't multitask. Because every time you move from one task to the next, you think you're getting more done, but you're actually draining the brain twice as fast of its resources. So therefore, it's no surprise that you get to noon and you're already spent. And because you've been draining your resources twice as fast by doing unproductive, resource wasting activities that you could have avoided had you understood how the brain works and been operating with more efficiency.
Okay, I heard a lot of people talk about this, that they have so many things to do and they don't want to sleep. It's a waste of time. That I heard somewhere. So what's your thought on that?
Well, you may think that you're getting more done, but unfortunately, the human brain doesn't work that way. And so people that feel like their brain is different or that they can do things differently than the brain is designed to do, good luck with that. It may last for a day, but it simply does not work over time. And then what happens is you may be awake longer, but during the hours that you're working, you are not anywhere near as productive as you could be if you slept properly. And so, you ask and it's also very bad for your health. And the brain can't do its other jobs that protect your health during the nighttime when it's supposed to be sleeping, because those functions won't occur unless you're going through the sleep cycles and your brain waves are slowing down. And so, you're just basically a ticking time bomb and you won't live as long and you won't get as much done during the day.
Like if someone is not sleeping well, right? Okay, so what do you think? What is the correct time to go to bed to have the best quality of sleep?
Well, generally it's in line with the sun because, our brain produces melatonin, which helps us go to sleep, and we have sleep wake cycles that are in line with, circadian rhythms. And so as the sun begins to go down, of course, it depends on the time of the year, right? We're not going to go to bed at 5 o'clock in the winter, but generally, like I go to bed, at 10 o'clock and I wake up at 6 o'clock. So it's 8 hours. That way I know I'm going to be getting 5 full sleep cycles. And it's important for the brain. The brain wants regularity, consistency, and familiarity. So what's not good is to go to bed at one time one night, another time another night. The brain can't get in a rhythm that way. So the brain wants to operate on regularity and predictability. That the brain is big on predicting and having consistency and familiarity. That's how it operates best.
Suppose a person want to change almost every habit they have.
Every habit?
Yeah, then how can they do it?
Well, the first step is to figure out, again, this ideal person that you want to be. What values do you want to have? What belief systems? What character traits? Like, who is it that you want to be? And then, that is going to involve, like you say, in your example, many new habits. And the key is to figure out what is going to be rewarding about these new habits. And so we have to sit there and analyze what is good and bad about the current habit that you have and what is good and bad about the new habit that you want to create and compare those. And if you're wanting to change, then obviously there's going to be more good things about the new habit than there are good things about the old habit. And so the brain needs to, again, understand that there's going to be more reward from the new habit than there is the old habit, but it needs to begin to experience that. And so, the key to the science behind creating new habits is, a trigger, an action, and a reward. And so you want to figure out when the new habits are going to occur, what the trigger for those are going to be, exactly what the action's going to be, and then what the reward is that you want to experience. And then you have to diagram that and begin to experience it. Okay.
What do you mean by trigger?
Well, it's anything that starts the habit. So it could be, let's say you want to do a morning ritual. Okay. You want to wake up in the morning and you want to do some things that are going to help set you right for the day. So it could be meditation, it could be breathing, it could be yoga, It could be mental exercises to help your brain perform better. And so what you can do is say, design the habit so that every day after I brush my teeth, I'm going to get my coffee, or even before my coffee, or, and what something is going to trigger you to start that habit. It could be right after you brush your teeth before you have your coffee. Okay, so right after you brush your teeth, that's your trigger. I brush my teeth, and then I'm going to go to this quiet place and do 20 minutes of these activities that are going to set my brain right for the day. Okay, and then I'm going to, as a reward, I'm going to get my cup of coffee. Okay, and
Mhm.
so the trigger is the brushing of the teeth, and the reward is the coffee. And the action is everything that you're going to do to train your brain in the middle. And so you're going to have to force yourself, because it's new and different, to do that. You're going to start doing that every day, and it's going to be unusual because your brain's not used to it. But then as you get your coffee, your brain begins to experience some reward, but then it also begins to experience the other rewards that you identified that you were going to get from doing this habit. So things like your brain is going to be operating better during the day because you're training it. You're going to be operating according to this habit that you had identified for yourself that was important. So you're going to be feeling good neurochemicals because you're doing what you said you were going to do. You're going to be operating according to your values and making yourself better and better, making yourself who you want to be as a person and identity. So that's going to make you feel good. So all of these things are rewarding for the brain, and they're rewarding because your body and brain release neurochemicals that feel good. You know what feel good neurochemicals are, right? Dopamine and serotonin. Okay, so your brain experiences those because you're doing what you said you're going to do, and you start to feel the benefits of them. And so the brain wants to do more of them. It becomes motivated because it knows it's going to get those chemicals at the end of it.
And yeah, there's one thing like when someone have a lunch, dinner, or anything like that, our the first priority of the body is to digest that food, right?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
When we eat a food, our
Yes,
body's priority is to first digest that food.
yes.
Yes, so suppose someone have to a lot of work to do in the noon, then should he or she should skip lunch or not?
No, not at all. The brain runs on different types of food. It actually runs on all three food groups: fats, carbohydrates, and protein. Amino acids are actually the building blocks for protein, as we know. And the brain's neurotransmitters, the building blocks for those are protein. And it also uses fat. And then the carbohydrates are basically the glucose that combines with the oxygen for the energy for the brain. So if you don't eat, you are starving the brain of its necessary energy to do its job. So, what you don't want to do is have something with high levels of sugar or that's highly processed that has no fiber, because it'll go right into your bloodstream. You'll get a surge of sugar. You'll peak and then crash, and then you'll feel very tired in the afternoon. So what you want to do is, and you don't want to eat a lot, because then all your energy goes to digesting the food, as opposed to just a minimal amount to digest the food and the rest of it being available for the brain. And so you have to eat moderate amounts, and you have to eat the right things. Typically, you want to eat all three food groups so that the digestion slows down, so that the sugar is not entering your bloodstream rapidly. It's entering just very gradually. And so you want to have things with fiber in it also, because fiber forms a gelatin in your gut and slows the digestion down, and the sugar that you are producing from the food can't get through the fiber very quickly, and so it emits into the bloodstream very slowly. That's why fiber is very good to have, because it slows down the insulin response. Okay, and so you just want to eat moderate amounts. I typically will eat like nuts, and maybe some grapes and maybe some vegetables, because those have protein. The nuts will have the protein, it'll have the healthy fats, and you'll get glucose. Every food typically has some amount of each, but you want to pick ones that are very potent and healthy forms of fat, for example, that can give you what you need. And the other thing you can do at noon is do some sort of either exercise by just walking for a period of time, getting sunshine. The walking will help bring, or if you can actually exercise, like go to the gym, but if you can even just walk for 15 minutes, it'll bring blood and oxygen to your brain and help rejuvenate you. The other thing you can do is cold therapy. That's what I'll do is I'll go take a shower for 3 minutes and very cold, and it completely resets everything. It causes all the stress and everything to drain out of your body. Yeah.
Okay, wait a sec. Should we do exercise or the cold thing? After lunch or before lunch?
So typically you would eat and then you would do one of those things.
Okay.
Yeah, because it helps the digestion, and you don't want eating to be the last thing you do. You want it to give you the fuel to go walking, and you don't want to eat after cold therapy because it starts to defeat the purpose, right? You want to eat and then go do something that's going to rejuvenate you and help reset your neurotransmitters, pull stress hormones out of your body and get you rejuvenated for the rest of the day. So cold therapy, whether it's a cold shower or even like cold ice packs, like if you're at work and you don't have a shower, you can bring ice packs to work and put them in your freezer and just set them on the back of your neck, on your shoulders. And, you can also do deep breathing. There's a vagus nerve that runs down our neck that'll help put us in or help calm our nervous system because our nervous system gets activated as we focus and do task stuff during the mornings. We need to reset the nervous system and get it calmed down again because it's spending our resources. And so the vagus nerve, which runs down our neck, we can either hum or breathe. That cold therapy in and around that area helps calm us. By activating that nerve, it helps calm our nervous system and puts us into a different nervous system state. So those are great tricks around lunchtime to help reset us for the afternoon.
And yeah, like you said, after lunch, exercise is a good time. But if someone want to do heavy exercise, then what's the good time for that?
Yeah, well, whatever, it depends on what they're looking for. So the most thought requiring work, the work that requires most of your brain, or the most demand from your brain, should be done, in my opinion, in the morning when your resource tank is fullest. And so um, you can, you can exercise, right after lunch, or you can exercise later on. It's up to you. I will typically do my heavy work exercising either after lunch. It can depend on your schedule too, right? When you can fit it in. But generally, if you want to go right back to work, just 15 or 20 minutes of some sort of exercise, moving around, just to create blood movement, oxygen movement in your body will be enough to reset yourself.
Okay. Anything else would you like to share?
Yeah, well, I help people with all types of this brain work, and I do so remotely. My work is really around brain performance, so it's helping people understand that they have a great level of influence over their brain performance. The range of performance is very broad. So if you think about the range of your physical performance from being out of shape to being in shape, your brain has that same range of performance levels. You may not realize it, and you may think that you're operating at peak performance, but there is a huge range of what's available to us as far as brain performance. And we may just not realize there's a whole nother level available to us. And so I help people partner with their brains, understand how the brain works so they can access all of this performance that they may not realize that they have available to them. And so that's my work. And if people want to work with me, they can reach out to me. I have a website, georgehaymaker.com. Or you can follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I have a bunch of videos on YouTube. It's George Haymaker. My spelling is Haymaker.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, George, for joining us. It
My
was great
pleasure.
talking with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.